the first thing I noticed wasn't that the nursery was empty. It was the sound of a power drill coming from upstairs. I had just returned from my 36-week prenatal appointment, exhausted after being told my blood pressure was climbing and that I needed to stay off my feet as much as possible. As I climbed the stairs, I froze. The white crib my husband and I had spent an entire Saturday building was gone. The rocking chair my late father had refinished for our baby had disappeared. Even the woodland wallpaper I had carefully chosen was being peeled off the wall. My mother-in-law, Linda, stood in the middle of the room with her hands on her hips, calmly directing to movers as if she owned the house. When she saw me, she smiled. "Perfect timing," she said, "we are almost finished." For a moment, I couldn't even speak. I looked around the room, hoping I was misunderstanding what I was seeing. "Where's my nursery?" Linda answered as though I had asked the weather. "It is not your nursery anymore." I laughed because the alternative was breaking down right there. "Excuse me." She folded her arms. "Ashley needs it more than you do." Ashley was my husband's younger sister. She had recently announced she was expecting her first child, and ever since then, Linda had been acting as though the entire family should revolve around her. I stared at the empty walls. "This room is in my house." Linda shrugged. "Families share. Ashley and Ben are struggling financially. You have a good job. You can buy another nursery." I looked toward the hallway, expecting my husband, Ryan, to step in and tell his mother she had lost her mind. Instead, he stood there with his eyes fixed on the floor. My stomach tightened. "Ryan," he rubbed the back of his neck. "Mom just thought." I never let him finish. "Did you know about this?" His silence answered everything. Months earlier, after Linda had barged into our house without knocking for the third time, I quietly installed a small security camera in the upstairs hallway. Ryan thought I was overreacting, but I wanted proof whenever his mother claimed she had permission to rearrange our lives. Neither of them knew the camera also recorded crystal clear audio. I reached into my purse, unlocked my phone, and silently opened the security app. The recording icon glowed red. Every word from that moment forward was being saved. Linda walked over and gently placed a hand on my shoulder as though she were comforting me. "You are being emotional because of the pregnancy." I stepped back. "Do not touch me." She sighed dramatically. "See, this is exactly why I handled everything while you were gone. I knew you would overreact." I looked around again. The crib, the dresser, the changing table, the books, the handmade blankets my grandmother had sewn. Everything was gone. Where are my baby's things? Already loaded into Ashley's garage. Something inside me shattered. "Those blankets belong to my grandmother." Linda rolled her eyes. "They're just blankets." Ryan finally spoke. "Maybe we can make new ones." I turned toward him so slowly that even he realized what he had just said. "Make new ones?" "Those were the last things my grandmother ever made before she passed away." He opened his mouth but couldn't find the words. Linda clapped her hands once. "Enough of this. Ashley will be here soon to pick up the rest. We should be celebrating instead of arguing." Celebrating. That single word told me everything I needed to know. This wasn't a misunderstanding. This had been planned. I quietly picked up the framed ultrasound photo that had somehow been left behind on the windowsill. Our daughter's tiny profile smiled back at me. I promised myself she would never grow up believing that love meant letting people walk all over you. Without saying another word, I walked downstairs. Linda called after me. "Where are you going?" I answered without looking back. "To make a phone call." She laughed. "Who are you going to call? The police?" I paused at the bottom of the stairs. "Actually, that's exactly where I'm starting." 20 minutes later, 2 officers arrived. Linda greeted them with complete confidence. "This is just a family misunderstanding." One officer looked at me. "Ma'am, what happened?" I explained that furniture and personal property had been removed from my home without my permission. Linda interrupted. "My son agreed." The officer turned toward Ryan. "Did your wife agree?" Ryan hesitated. Linda quickly answered for him. "We are family. Everything belongs to all of us." The officer's expression immediately changed. "That isn't how property law works." Linda frowned. "Excuse me." I opened the security app on my phone. "Officer, would you like to hear the recording from before I came upstairs?" Linda's smile disappeared for the first time that day. "Recording." I pressed play. Her own voice filled the room. "Do it while she's gone. She cry for a day or two, but she get over it. Once Ashley has everything, there won't be anything she can do about it." The living room fell completely silent. Ryan looked at his mother with genuine shock. "Mom." Linda's face turned pale. She looked directly at me. "You were recording me." I calmly locked my phone. "No, the security system was. And it recorded everything." Linda's face drained of color as her own words echoed through the living room. For the first time since I had walked into my empty nursery, she had nothing to say. Ryan looked from my phone to his mother, then back at me. I could see the realization settling in that this had never been a misunderstanding. His mother had deliberately waited until I was away to strip our baby's room, believing I would simply accept it once everything was gone. The police officers exchanged a quick glance before one of them calmly asked where the nursery furniture had been taken. Linda finally found her voice. She insisted everything had been done with good intentions because Ashley needed the furniture more. She claimed she thought Ryan had every right to make the decision on behalf of the family. The officer interrupted her politely but firmly, explaining that removing property from someone else's home without the owner's permission could be treated as theft, regardless of family relationships. Hearing those words seemed to shake Ryan even more than the recording had. He slowly admitted that he had known his mother wanted to move the furniture, but he never imagined she would actually empty the entire nursery while I was gone. The officers asked for Ashley's address, and within an hour we were standing in front of her garage. The door rolled open, revealing every single piece from our nursery stacked neatly inside. My heart sank when I spotted my grandmother's handmade blankets tossed carelessly into a cardboard box beneath paint cans and moving supplies. Ashley looked genuinely confused as the officers explained the situation. She insisted Linda had told her that I had agreed to give everything away because I planned to redesign the nursery after the baby was born. Her expression changed instantly when she realized she had been lied to. She looked directly at Linda and quietly asked why she had dragged her into something like this. Linda refused to apologize. Instead, she doubled down, saying everyone was overreacting about a few pieces of baby furniture. She insisted families should sacrifice for one another and accused me of embarrassing everyone by involving the police. I stayed calm because the recording had already spoken louder than any argument I could make. The movers carefully loaded every item back onto the truck while the officers documented everything. Watching the crib return to our house felt less like recovering furniture and more like reclaiming the boundaries that had slowly disappeared throughout my marriage. That evening, Ryan sat across from me at the kitchen table without saying a word for several minutes. Finally, he admitted something I had known for years but had desperately hoped would change. He confessed that ever since childhood he had learned it was easier to agree with his mother than to stand up to her. Every time she crossed a line, he convinced himself it was better to avoid conflict than disappoint her. He looked exhausted as he apologized, but this time I realized an apology could not erase months of silence and years of allowing his mother to control our lives. Trust is built slowly, but it can disappear in a single afternoon. Over the following week, Linda called constantly. Some messages demanded an apology from me for humiliating the family. Others blamed the pregnancy hormones for my reaction. She even left one voicemail claiming that I had destroyed Ashley's baby shower by making everyone uncomfortable. I saved every message without replying. For the first time since joining the family, I felt no need to defend myself. The facts were clear, and everyone had heard her own words on the recording. She could rewrite the story in her mind, but she could not rewrite the evidence. Ryan surprised me a few days later by changing every lock on our house and collecting every spare key his mother had ever been given. He also installed a video doorbell and apologized again, not with promises this time, but with actions. He told Linda she would no longer be allowed to enter our home without an invitation, and that every future visit would happen only if both of us agreed. She exploded with anger, accusing me of turning her son against his own family. Ryan calmly answered that protecting his wife and daughter was finally his responsibility, not something he could keep postponing. 3 weeks later, our daughter, Lily, entered the world healthy and beautiful. As I rocked her in the very nursery that had almost been taken away, I realized the room meant far more than painted walls and baby furniture. It represented safety, respect, and the kind of home I wanted my daughter to grow up in. Every blanket, every stuffed animal, and every bedtime story would happen in a place where her voice would always matter, even before she was old enough to speak. Linda sent flowers to the hospital along with a short note asking if we could put everything behind us for the baby's sake. There was still no apology, only another request to pretend nothing had happened. I thanked the nurse for the flowers but asked her to donate them to another family on the maternity floor. Some relationships can heal after trust is broken, but only when accountability comes first. Without accountability, forgiveness simply becomes permission for the same behavior to happen again. Several months later, I occasionally watched the original security recording, not because I wanted to relive that painful day, but because it reminded me how easy it is to ignore small warning signs until they become impossible to overlook. Installing that camera had once made me question whether I was being overly cautious. Instead, it became the one decision that protected my family when no one else was willing to. Sometimes the strongest boundaries are the quiet ones we establish long before we realize we'll need them. Looking back now, I no longer think that day was really about a nursery. It was about a grandmother who believed she could control every decision, a husband who had spent years confusing peace with surrender, and a mother who finally understood that protecting her child sometimes begins long before the child is even born. My daughter will grow up knowing that love never requires silence, and family never earns the right to cross your boundaries simply because they share your last name. If this story touches your heart, don't forget to like, subscribe, and share your thoughts in the comments.